Hi, I'm Faith, and welcome to Field and Foley. Today, I'm joined by the incredibly talented Nia Hansen. Nia wears many hats, including author of the Graven trilogy and sound designer at none other than Skywalker Sound. Over her impressive career, her work has brought life to the sonic worlds of Marvel, Disney, and Pixar, crafting the signature sounds of vibranium, Thor's axe, and other iconic elements. Nia designs technology, magic, and creatures layered with texture, symbolism, and deep attention to detail. Hello, Nia, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you again.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you. To hop right into it, for the people who might not know, could you give a little summary about what you do as a sound designer with Skywalker? I know every project is very different, but maybe just an overall summary of your role?
Yeah, so as a sound designer, my main role is to create the bespoke sounds for the film. And since I work on a lot of science fiction and fantasy films, this is usually sounds for things that you can't just go out and record, like spaceships and superpowers and magic creatures and things of that like. So I'm using other sound elements to create these unique sounds for the film. And I'm also very involved in supervising as well. So I help organize and manage our sound effects editors and our Foley team. I help with some of the scheduling, and I also do reviews with the filmmakers and sort of guide the whole storytelling with sound for each particular project from start to finish.
Nice. I didn't know you were super involved in the supervising aspect of it
Yeah,
too as well.
and not all sound designers are. There's a lot of sound designers who are also supervising sound editors, so they kind of, make those unique sounds and do a lot of the creative heavy lifting, but all the rest is just on the sound editors and the rest of the team. And there's some sound designers who, and sometimes I envy this job where, they're sort of in their dark little room making really cool sounds and deliver them, and then they're hands off. They don't have to bear the responsibility of it. But I really liked being involved and keeping things consistent and kind of having some control over the overall aesthetic and try to really get the entire film on track with what the filmmakers want.
Nice. Really cool. So, you have had a bunch of recent movies in the theaters lately. It feels like every time I go to the theaters as of late, I usually see you in the credits somewhere. A couple of them are Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Wish, and Moana 2, and any others that you would enjoy talking about too. I'm open to all of them. Those are just kind of the more recent ones and the recent ones that I've watched. So, seeing as this is Field and Foley, we could kick it off with you got a lot of your start in audio with field recording with horses for Warhorse. Did any of these projects or any recent projects involve field recording?
Yeah, so I feel like since the days of Warhorse, my time budgeted for field recording and gathering new assets just keeps shrinking and shrinking, which is really sad because it's one of my favorite parts of the job. So among the recent films, for Wish, I definitely had to do field recording and it was mostly around my house. So Wish has a little character called Star who doesn't speak English but has a voice and it's very expressive and animated. So it needed a sound that kind of felt vocal and you could understand what it was trying to say, what it was trying to communicate. And it couldn't sound too physical. It could sound kind of magical. So I recorded a lot of glass and crystal kind of rubs and textures to try and perform something that felt vocal and expressive, but also kind of hit all those other metrics we needed for the character in the right size and the right tonality. So I did a lot of recording in my home and gathering props in that sort of same textural zone to try to find something that fit.
Nice. Yeah, I have heard you talk in other podcasts about how you try and really keep your sound design really organic and really kind of grounded,
Yeah.
especially when it's like warring with a whole bunch of other different stuff, and especially with Moana 2, like having it be so organic, like so largely water, but also like the water is alive and nature is alive. Like how was that? I know we also kind of chatted a little bit after that movie came out, and you kind of said that some of those sound design, some of the sound design was cut from that movie too. So I'm curious to see what that process was like, and also what made it.
Yeah, that was really fun because, sort of like the Marvel films, I was working with an established franchise. So Tim Nielsen was the supervisor and sound designer for Moana 1 and had already built a big library of water sounds and, established a lot of the other signature sounds for the first film. So I sort of started off by, taking all of that, and we absolutely used as much of that material from the first movie that still worked. And there was a lot of water, a lot of gray water recordings. I could also pull from water I've done in the past. So, like, Raya and the Last Dragon had a water dragon in it and a lot of water magic. So I had done my own recordings for that movie, so I could pull some of that material as well for, like, the living ocean entity in Moana 2. And there was also quite a lot of new stuff that was in my wheelhouse, so that was fun. So there was magic that didn't appear in the first movie, especially at the end, like the kind of golden magic that Moana gets to wield. And Maui's hook as well does a lot more actions than it did in the first movie, so we sort of had a few elements that we could reuse and then had to kind of match that but expand the palette. And doing that was very familiar for me working on the Marvel films, where we have a lot of like Iron Man's suit and Thor's hammer and Cap shield. That's like you're inheriting some limited material, and then as that object expands and is doing more actions and maybe changes form somewhat, you have to kind of keep it the same but make it different. Yeah, it's a fun challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that process like for you for, trying to build on the source material for the last one and trying to, make it different with Moana 2, it's a sequel, and then with Wish, the vibe was kind of like they were trying to build on this old nostalgic Disney type of
Yeah.
vibe is kind of what the premise of the movie was. Do you find that's kind of limiting to your creativity, or you really enjoy that, like building off of like previous content?
I enjoy it. I think Wish was a little more fun because it felt less like trying to copy something older, as like the direction was very precise. So we were kind of going on a Tinkerbell kind of magic, magical look, that sort of golden, happy, like wondrous, gentle magic in some of the old films.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, the villain has it like classical green villain magic.
Yeah. Green, that sums
yeah,
it up well.
yeah, that evil green magic. But in those older films, like a lot of it was just covered in the orchestra. Like there isn't really sound design, organic sound design to kind of go off of. But there's a lot of like chimes. Well, mostly for the Tinkerbell stuff, there's like a lot of chimes and a lot of orchestral design. So I definitely kind of started with some of that source, but also went more organic, more textural, kind of updated it for the movie and for how the visuals are different. So it was fun, like trying to capture a classic vibe, but
Yeah.
do it in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I feel like it would be hard because you don't want to like encroach on, like, you don't want to completely change it and have the audience kind of be like, this is a completely different movie. This sounds like a completely different movie. But also you have so much like room to grow and create new design with new things. So
Yeah.
I never really thought about how Maui's hook was a lot more in the second one than it was in the first one.
Yeah, so the first one, it's like it lights up and it lights down. So we had kind of the power up, the power down, but it's doing a lot more. It's like it'll be on and steady. So we had to kind of come up with just like the presence of it and a lot of its motions as he's swishing it with the magic without it sounding like too lightsabery, or like it can't be too kind of. We didn't want to go too electric because that wasn't quite appropriate, but it looks a bit like that, and we didn't want it to be too close to some of the other magic. So it's finding like the sweet spot. Of course, that also can play through whatever the score is doing at that moment, and everything else going on. You always have to fit it in kind of the right sonic real estate at the same time.
Yeah. and then pray that it sticks in the final cut.
Yeah, there's probably like 80% of the track it's never heard.
Yeah. Yeah, one of these days we just need a SFX only version of movies.
I think that would be awesome, especially like when I was in film school, there was a couple DVDs that had that option, but for like studying sound, it was really cool to just listen to the whole movie, like just the effects stem, or even better would be like the sound effects pre-dub, where you kind of have everything there just to see like what was done.
I would love that.
Yeah. I think that would be amazing to sort of study what was cut.
Yeah. That would be so neat. I would love that.
Yeah.
Just as like a little extra in the for people who buy physical or something.
Absolutely. I also learned a lot like sitting on the mix stage after doing editorial, so like as a Foley supervisor or as a sound effects editor, and like knowing how much I cut, because I cut all of it, and then getting it to the pre-mix stage and hearing how much we kind of pared back or how much stays in, and then on the final mix, hearing how much kind of gets left out. It sort of gave me a better perspective of what to prioritize, like how much to cut, what's important, where the focus is going to be, like what the mixers are going to do with the material. And over time I could kind of save the mixers time by preliminarily like muting certain sections, or like putting my attention on what's going to be important and not doing as much where it's not, sort of anticipating the mix because I understood
just
what
kind
the
of
shape's
learning what they'll end up cutting out.
Yeah.
So I was reading the other day about Randy Tom and how like his sound design of Toothless and How to Train Your Dragon like kind of like inspired the visual for Toothless. And then I was also listening to your podcast about how you kind of did the same thing for Doctor Strange, like your sound design for Doctor Strange and a lot of that inspired the visuals for that. Have there been any other kind of instances recently or otherwise that your design or like your input in before the visuals are kind of crafted, how that's impacted what the film has looked like? Because I thought that was super interesting how you can like kind of push that input in and impact the visuals.
We always wish that that's the way it's gonna go, right? And sometimes my clients will express that they're hoping that'll happen too when we're doing early sound design, but I feel like realistically audio post comes too late in the life cycle of the project, when a lot of those visual ideas are already established, or like everything is too frenetic to kind of coordinate material between departments. That said, the filmmakers are reviewing and guiding our early sounds at the same time that they're reviewing and guiding the visual departments, what they're producing. So I imagine that there's some creative influence that carries through them. Maybe indirectly. They're kind of inspired by what we're doing, and that ends up as a note on the other side. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can't think of any specific recent examples where, at least that I know of, where the early design influenced the sound, the visuals.
Yeah. I feel like turning a page on that could be kind of interesting. I'm curious how your work balances are with that. Have you ever been tempted to give your feedback on the story as it develops as an author.
No, that's not.
Realistically, I know that you probably turn that part of your brain off, but
No, I would never give feedback on the story, but definitely like I learn a lot about storytelling from watching the picture edit evolve. Like it's really fun to sort of start as early as I start and see like the initial rough cut, like the assembly, or on animation sometimes just storyboards still, and they're really still kind of hammering out the story arc, and watching it evolve and kind of analyzing what gets cut, what gets added, what they're tweaking. And I'm very involved in conforms as well. So that's where I'm matching all of the picture edits so I can sort of see the nitty gritty of all the little choices that they make, even like swapping out dialogue or adding it in, things like that, to fine tune the story. So I definitely learn a lot by watching those decisions that are made, whether it's like, I think it's a good one or not. I learned a lot either way, just kind of analyzing and seeing my reaction with how, the story's evolving. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Especially being at Skywalker for, working with Disney films and with Marvel films for so long, I feel like reading up on the lore, like knowing all of all of these stories so in depth, if something happens that you're like, I don't think that would really happen in canon.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just too much of a Marvel nerd.
Well, and we're also like, I'm also working, so like the Marvel films, I'm working on them before like any of the public, like there's no audience reactions or speculation or anything like that until like maybe a trailer drops, but that's not the whole picture, right? So it's only kind of myself and my team that can chat about this sort of stuff, like what we think or, whether it's following canon or not. Yeah, we're very isolated before the movie comes out.
Do you ever look at how kind of the public has reacted to your work after it comes out, or do you spare yourself the emotional roller coaster?
Yeah, I can spare myself because they're reacting to the whole product, right? And most people don't notice the sound. Like we always say, if they notice the sound, you've done something wrong. Like the soundtrack is supposed to be immersive. It's supposed to keep them in the storytelling. They're not supposed to notice like that line was ADR or that Foley sounds weird or that sound effect's inappropriate. Like you want them in the experience, immersed the whole time. So if they've noticed the sound, it's probably because there's an error or the low quality or something like that. So there aren't a lot of like reviews that will specifically mention the sound. So I'm spared by default.
Yeah. Yeah. The majority of the time, if I ever hear people talk about sound in any movie ever, it's usually people complaining about bad ADR.
Yeah.
And then all the comments are like, what's ADR?
Yeah.
And then all the audio people reply.
There was one moment on Avengers Endgame, and I didn't seek this out. A friend like showed it to me. There was someone commented on Reddit. They made like a post about. So there's a shot after the snap of like New York, a bunch of establishing shots of New York like absolutely vacant, and there's one of the Hudson Bay, and I put this whale call that's really like long and sad, and we put it in kind of low, and then in a scene after that, Captain America is telling Black Widow about how with less ships and like people, the whales have returned to the Hudson Bay. So it's like nature is healing a little bit. And I figured no one would ever notice that I like snuck a little whale sound in there as like a nod to the scene later on. But this one person on Reddit noticed, and they were like, "Hey, did you guys hear like there's whales?" And then he says about the whales, and I'm like, "Yes." Yes. Someone noticed my sad moment.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was very funny. Awesome. My little whale Easter egg.
Your own addition to the canon. And then I wanted to ask about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes also. That is the only one on this little list that I made for myself that I haven't watched because I'm terrified of monkeys. But
Oh my goodness, don't watch it then.
yeah, it's just all monkeys.
Oh no. Well, so
But
funny enough, well, when I worked on that, it was very early on. I was just helping with some specific elements, and it was still all of the actors in mocap suits. So I didn't see any monkeys. You need that version, I guess.
yeah, I need the version with all the people in the goofy suits. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So even if you were scared of monkeys, you wouldn't have to worry about it.
I would have been fine. Sorry, I cut off your
that?
question.
No, you're good. That's really funny. What was that like having to kind of like were you doing a lot of like the monkey sounds or were you doing a lot of like the walking, the Foley? What was that like working with the visuals only being the people in the suits?
Yeah. So one of the main things I was brought on for to help with at that stage was the environments, and we were exploring without music, using the environments to do a lot of the storytelling, a lot of the emotion, a lot of the tension, which was really awesome because ambiences usually are the first thing to get broomed, even if we spend a lot of attention on them to do some of that storytelling, heavy lifting. It's like really hard to get them to feature in the final mix. And often there's music kind of wall to wall, so finding the spots where the ambiences can really be powerful is rare. So being able to work on something where someone's like, just like go nuts, do everything you can with the ambiences, like little specifics, lots of detail, lots of texture. So that was really fun.
That is awesome. Yeah, I need a version with just the ambiences and the guys in the suits.
Yeah, we need the PG pre-dub on the DVD for that one, or the Blu-ray.
Exactly. Switching gears a little bit to something, a kind of isolated question, and I saw that you were a judge for one of the Air Wiggles contests recently. If anybody listening doesn't know what Air Wiggles is, it's a online community at airwiggles.com that is great and has tons of support and a community for job people in film, in games, in field recording, in Foley, and all of that. It's a great resource for information. At the time of this recording, AirCon is going on. By the time this episode comes out, it will be finished, but all of the recordings of all the talks will be up on their YouTube and on Air Wiggles, I believe. So if you missed it, go ahead and check it out. But anyways, going back, you were a judge for a Air Wiggles redesign contest, so I'm excited to see what was that like and what did you look for in determining like good in-depth sound design, and did you kind of have like a personal metric kind of system that you used, or what was that like?
Yeah, that was really fun. If they do another one and I have enough time, it would be really fun to participate, not as a judge, but as a submit an entry. So it was a live action music video short film. So it had no production audio. So everyone had a blank slate. The film was called Binocular Trick by Spencer Zimmerman. So folks could submit an entry on their own or with a team, and they could choose any length clip from the film, so like the whole 3 minutes or just a little snippet, and they could cover whatever they wanted. So some entries were just music, some were just sound design, some had a lot of dialogue focus, some were the whole package. So I think the hardest thing was judging entries that were so different in terms of length and content. But we were instructed to focus on 3 core elements. Production value, so like high quality sound effects, clean recordings, good mixing, and creativity. So any new approaches or like outside the box thinking that made an entry stand out. And I really noticed when something was like, well, I haven't seen this in all the other ones. Like that was really fun. And then storytelling. So it's a short story about a home invasion gone wrong. And a lot of people used audio to elevate and enhance the story, or even like start to tell a wider story beyond the scope of the 3 minutes. And that was really cool.
Nice. Yeah. I'm so excited. I got super busy right as that went down, and I was like,
Oh no.
darn it, I wanted to do that and everything. I I hope they do one again because
Me
I would
too.
love to do an entry. But
Yeah,
life
absolutely.
was not on my side for that one. But it
Absolutely.
sounded like everybody did an awesome job. That it's a super fun concept. I really like that.
Yeah, I hope they do it again. And it was interesting, like, I don't often listen or like watch the same scene with different takes. Um,
Mm,
so it was kind of really fun to you see the same thing over and over, but get everyone's interpretation and see where their creativity went with it, like what they noticed, what they wanted to emphasize. Yeah, with the same visual content.
yeah. Was there like any specific kind of instance that stuck in your mind of being like, "Oh, this edition made it really like really stand out, really special," kind of any sort of indicator that kind of gave you that feeling of like, "Oh, this is one of the good ones." Like this is a finalist
Yeah,
type of a feeling.
they were definitely entries that kind of covered everything really competently, but in a way that is like what I would expect. Like if I was hiring a team
Mm,
to do a film, I would kind of expect them to cover all these things in this way. It was like very well done, but didn't surprise me. And then there were
mm.
some, like, there was one that used voiceover to sort of tell the internal world of the main character
Oh.
and sort of tell this wider context of what she's actually doing as like the scout for this home invasion that was happening. Um, and there were some that chose to cut at a really good spot. So they started the clip and then they ended on a story beat that like left a lot of questions and was really
Mm,
sort of thrilling. So just like choosing where to stop was a great storytelling choice. Um, and there were some musical choices that surprised me too, like some that made the ending where the main character is sort of running away from the scene on her own as the camera pans up, and it made it feel like the opening of a TV series, like as if the story was going to go on and that was just the beginning. I'm like, oh, I didn't get that feeling in any of the other entries, right? So there were a lot of sort of sideways thinking that was really fun to see.
nice. That's awesome. Yeah, Air Wiggles has so many things, has so many cool
They're awesome.
opportunities and like learning opportunities and just fun stuff that they do all the time. I was just in Nathan Moody's talk yesterday about sound
Yeah.
libraries and that was super fun. I love that.
Yeah.
All of the talks are so cool. It's like questions that I, have had for myself, but didn't realize like, oh, they made an entire talk on answering all of my questions. Let's go.
Yeah. I have a bunch queued up. I haven't had time to watch them, but then since there's
I
replays, I'm
know.
going to binge them all.
Yeah, I'm so glad that they're recording them because it's like if I had the time, I would just sit
Yeah.
all day and watch aircon all day, but I can't.
Yeah, having a lot of virtual conferences and recordings has been one of the really great things to kind of come out of the pandemic. That there's a lot
Mhm.
more accessibility.
Yeah, right? And even just like Zoom in and of itself, like
Yes.
what we can see each other on right now, like it just
Yeah.
becomes so much more normalized to chat with each other over the airwaves. It's a a blessing from a curse.
Yeah. And I still work from home quite often.
Mhm.
I don't have like a
Um
very fancy setup, but it does the trick. And there's some very cool new technologies like the Sony virtual mixing environment headphones, which replicate some of our
Oh,
rooms at Skywalker. So I can be at home and sort of hear it as if it was one of the environments over there, which has been really awesome.
neat. Very cool. What kind of like what other gear are you sporting? Like what monitors are you using?
I only have two. I have my video on
Okay.
one, and I have the iMac. I'm in a really small place, so I don't even have room for speakers. I'm just on headphones, either my normal ones or my fancy headphones. Um, so it's pretty basic, but I guess
Nice.
that goes to show you don't need a ton of fancy gear to do good sound design.
Nice. That's very nice about the accessibility of this
Yeah,
job is, it really can be simple if you let it be simple.
absolutely.
Nice. Well, I would be remiss and Ben would be disappointed if I did not bring up the awesome medium change right now, which is the Graven trilogy. I guess I could probably clarify for any listeners that aren't familiar with this book series. It's very sci-fi, very multiversal, very like bubble universes. Everything is very different. Everything is surreal. I think that you would probably also do a way better job than me explaining the premise of your books here. I'll give you a little bit of a platform to explain the premise.
Yeah, so the setting of the trilogy is a bubble multiverse, and instead of parallel worlds or timelines, it's spherical, so like bubble space, stuck together or encapsulated within each other like a gigantic foam. And within each bubble, the physical laws differ slightly or a lot. So physics is different. Things transform as they pass from one to another. Maybe they're fine, maybe they're catastrophically destroyed. It depends on what the physical parameters are in each world. So the whole economy and social political fabric of the world is built around these bubbles and the travel between them, that sort of thing.
I am all hopped up on serotonin from it because I just finished the last book like a couple weeks ago.
Awesome.
And it was great. I was like, I have to finish this before I get to chat with Nia because I need to make sure that and then I started getting closer to the end of the book. And then I started getting nervous. I was like, oh, no, if these characters die, I'm gonna have to have a talk with her when we chat. But no, it was good.
How could you kill my favorite?
I know.
Look, I have killed very few main characters compared to many authors.
Yes. You spared quite a few of people. I'm gonna have to like censor
In some
a lot
form,
of
yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna have to like censor what I say so I don't spoil it for everybody. But staying alive by the end was such a huge shock to me. But then then it like started getting into it in like the final chapters, and I was like, this is so poetic. I love this.
I love an redemption arc.
It's just good redemption arc. And my red flag is that my favorite characters are always the ones that are the most toxic with the like most incredible like 360 a billion times character development. So Thray.
Yeah, I love that too. Absolute fan favorite for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love him, and the way that the story leaves out in the end with him is amazing, very poetic. I was so overprotective of Farron though, and I was like,
that's the only tragedy, the only big tragedy.
Yeah, that was like the one character that I was like, if Farron dies at the end,
I'm gonna have words.
The vibe at this podcast recording is gonna be not actually. I'm just kidding.
So
no,
when
it was great.
Yeah, when I was trying to, so this is my first trilogy, and I was trying to figure out how on earth to wrap up 3 books. I talked to a friend of mine who's done many trilogies, and his advice was, if you nail the main character arc or arcs, you'll be forgiven for everything else. Like, nothing else kind of matters. Like, nailed the main character arc. So I was like, okay, I can do this. As long as I try and wrap up all of those promises made early on as best I can. Everything else can be a little messy. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but this is going to be fine. So I'm glad to hear that those conclusions worked for you.
Yeah. My favorite, like, my favorite ending was definitely Lita's, with just, like, how her, like, struggles and everything have been so clearly built up over the course of, like, this entire trilogy. And then her ending, like, the way that her character was able to resolve was so I was like, I'm so happy for her.
That's good. Yeah, it almost feels impossible for a while, right? Like, how can we forgive all of this struggle and pain, and just, like, how could this possibly have a happy ending?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's taken, like, it's a blessing and a curse, because I was, like, a huge book nerd. I read, like, tons of books in a week, and then always wished as a kid that I could talk to the authors and ask them questions and stuff. And now that I'm, like, actually at that point, I'm like, it's taking every fiber in my being not to, like, text her at every single page being like, oh my gosh, this just happened, holy crap. Or, like, this line was amazing. There was one specific line in the third book that made me giggle, because it was talking in Three's perspective, and he was walking from one room to another, and it was like the reverb of his footsteps changed as he transitioned rooms, and I was like, there she is.
Yes.
There she is.
Some active listening here.
Yeah.
Yeah, my writing's been described as, like, unusually, and I didn't realize this was unusually, like, sensory and, like, 5 senses, which is absolutely what I use in sound design as well. Like, I'm paying attention to what the physical material of something is, how it's moving, like, what textures are, what surfaces are, you know, and, like, what the reverb is, what the environment is. So sound design is, like, very, even though we're working with audio, it's very 5 senses, and you're aware of the context of everything that's going on, what's touching what, and what the sensations are, and what the feelings are. So bringing that to my writing and being, like, very sensory and descriptive just seems natural. But I guess it's a bit unusual for books to be so immersive in the 5 senses. But I'm happy to be a little different.
But they're fewer and far between. So it's always nice to get an author that's very, very grounded in their descriptions, because it makes for such an enjoyable listening experience when you feel so immersed into it. So
yeah, I feel like there's sort of 2 camps. I have readers who can absolutely picture and feel what's going on, and they're really immersed really easily by my prose style, and then some readers that just can't picture anything, and it's too dense, and it's like they can't get into it. So it's definitely a taste thing.
Yeah. And I think it, like, came out, I've been seeing a trend recently of people talking about how other people physically cannot picture things in their mind. Like, it's like a way that their brains are just, And I've been always like, because I've always been the type of person to vividly imagine books in my head, and when I open a book, I'm just there, you know?
Oh, yeah. I think we're the same. We have hyperphantasia. Yeah. You just picture everything, all senses. It's just, you're in it.
Yeah. So I can't imagine not being able to do that.
Yeah. I'm definitely can sort of picture and hear and experience things in my mind. And as I'm writing, if I'm doing discovery writing where I'm kind of letting the scene unfold, it's almost like watching a movie or being in an experience, and I'm sort of dictating it more than I'm actually actively kind of creating the wordsmithing.
That's awesome. Are there any specific scenes from the book that you can like super vividly hear, like any specific like really climactic moments that you are like, man, I wish I could like turn this into like a physical form other than a book, right?
They're probably really spoilery scenes. um, there's, yeah, like for example, there's a moment in book two where something really important happens to the ship. And there's a fall involved. I can hear that one. Um, yeah, so for the audiobook, I was actually going to sound design a few scenes to like actually put in the audiobook as like a treat. But I ended up getting super busy in my day job, and I didn't have time to put that much effort into it because I wouldn't want to half-ass it, you know.
Yeah.
I'd want it to sound right. But that would have been really fun to kind of imagine the sound effects and the sound design. I can hear, so when one of the main starships in the book, the Azra, has like a singing sound. At certain times when she's accelerating, that's sort of like a ethereal, metallic, crystalline kind of sound. So I can kind of hear that in my head. But just knowing what I want in my head there's still a huge challenge of actually figuring out how to make that. That's my whole job, right? I often know what I want something to sound like, but to figure out what I'm gonna use, what I'm gonna grab or record to try to get there, or what plugins I'm gonna use, what kind of editing or processing, like how to get from A to B is the whole challenge, right?
Yeah, that you bringing up that scene in book two, how you can hear that, I could totally imagine. And then like alternatively, do you have any sounds or scenes in the book that feel like impossible to replicate in the real world?
A lot of metaphysical concepts. There's another dimension overlaid with the physical world. I do think that would be really difficult to express, especially the characters that are able to navigate that world in like a non-physical form and interact with information that's informing the physical. I think the visuals would have to go a long way to help get the right feeling across. I did a little bit of this with Doctor Strange and like the astral forms and the astral plane. Sort of the transition between worlds, and then what it sounds like for the body to be ethereal and then passing through objects, contacting other objects, that sort of thing. And sound design for abstract concepts is, of course, about evoking the right emotion and sensation and sort of getting non-literal. Similar with slow motion, flashbacks, dream sequences, all these things I really love to work on. And in between spaces, like at the end of Barbie, they're in this featureless environment of like pale surfaces and kind of a strobing glow, and it's sort of womb-like and afterlife-like. So I do love capturing those kind of philosophical, metaphysical, liminal spaces that are ethereal and strange. And of course, using organic sounds that we respond to get there. Yeah, there's a lot of impossible things in my books that would seem like they're impossible sound design, but you know, artists will get there somehow.
Yeah.
Capture the right feeling.
Yeah, there's so many things in it that are just like, just because of the entire premise, the fact that it is multiversal, it's just like, it feels like this sound, as much as I could make it how I could perceive it, like in my limited imagination, I could make like a version of it. But I feel like I could never make the full like extent of, you know, in the concept of the book, what it would really sound like, you know, with the whole, especially with the very like out of body passing in and out of different consciousnesses and everything. Like, it's just so cool. Like, I'm reading it and I'm like trying, I imagine it, but then at the same time I keep catching myself and I'm like, but it would sound so much cooler if I were,
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's not about making a sound for something. It's about like playing with dynamics to get the right feel. So like there's a lot of moments in film where we drop to silence, or like something comes in strongly or something leaves completely, and so we get it wrenches our emotions by a powerful dynamic shift. So you can do something like that too. A lot of really impactful moments and spaces are silent, but it's because we've been feeling that support of the sound for so long, and then it leaves, and we're kind of in that breathless vacuum, sort of untethered state for a little bit. So sometimes it's not about making a sound for something, it's about using dynamics or some other tool like that to figure out how you're going to achieve the right feeling in the audience.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah, I told you this ages ago, but I want to share this as a selling point for the people listening too. Is when I was reading through the second book, I was in the middle of traveling to visit my family in North Carolina. I live in Saskatchewan. I was traveling to go visit my family in North Carolina, and I was reading the book while we were on a layover. I think it was in like Detroit or Toronto.
Oh, no.
And I was so into the book as I was boarding the plane that I left my phone in the airport.
Yeah. Oh, I felt really bad.
I was like, I have to tell her, because that just means that I was literally so much, because, like we were saying, when you're in it, you're in it. And I think it was like a super climactic moment. I think it was like at a big confrontation closer to like the middle-ish, endish of the book. And I was like, man. I did end up getting it back, surprisingly. I just didn't have it for the duration of my trip, but that just gave me more time to read.
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't distracted by my phone.
Yeah, no social media. It's like they say, like a book good enough that you miss your train stop or your subway stop. Sort of thing. Yeah. That's what we want.
A book good enough that you leave your phone in Detroit. Oh man, but don't feel bad. That's
an amazing compliment. Yes, thank you.
Oh man. So I wanted to ask, what like informs these, in the like topic of it being very like multiversal. There's a lot of new cultures and new languages and new practices and traditions littered throughout the whole series. And I'm curious, like, what informs them, these new cultures and languages? What do you draw like inspiration from? For example, like at the very end, there's a very like traditional Viking-esque ceremony. Spoiler
for
free.
Somebody. Yeah.
And then also with, please correct me if I pronounce any of these words wrong, because it's hard. But Daejin, is that how you?
Daejin?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. His language. Is so cool.
It's kind of pidgin language.
It almost like there was. Yeah. It almost reminded me of like different. At one moment it reminded me of like in an indigenous language. At one other moment it reminded me a little bit of like Arabic almost. But that might just be my own personal bias because I know more Arabic. Yeah, what's your process with that? Because there's so much content, so much new content to create.
Yeah, so unconscious inspiration aside, I try not to directly draw from Earth cultures. There's a lot of fantasy and sci-fi that's sort of an Earth culture with the serial numbers filed off. I try to avoid that, so I'm not appropriating anything or sort of writing outside of my lane. But I am inspired a lot by art and by nature here on Earth, and it took me a long time to kind of realize that my brain works this way, but I feel like I excel at absorbing something and then abstracting it, something I'm experiencing or viewing or learning. So abstracting it into little components. And then when I'm in a creative mode, I'm taking those little building blocks from kind of all over, different sources, and then trying to put them together in a new way. And I think a lot of times it creates something that does feel new and fresh and not really derivative of something else. Other times I'm probably, because of that unconscious level of our inspirations and biases and references, I'm probably not creating something very original, but my creative approach is to kind of try to come up with something new. And a lot of times my inspirations for a culture or a language or a practice will come from like a little seed idea, and I start to build concepts around that. So like maybe it's the certain cloth textile or like this deep sea creature or a science fact about a weird plant behavior, or like a philosophical concept that could be grounded literally in reality, like a little thing that then I try to expand in fun ways. And like Dejin's language, which is interspersed with the English, is that was just going mostly for the right feeling, kind of like I do with sound design. It's like not really the literal. I haven't yet had time to create a constructed language for a book series. I would love to. I've been wanting to for a long time, but the deadlines say no. So I didn't have time to like really rigorously go over the linguistics of what his language is or what his culture comes from. So it's sort of brushstroked in there, but I really wanted to capture a certain feel of what he's trying to convey in his warmth and like the emotion. So I was going more by like the sound of it, at least in my own head, as I'm writing it, as I'm reading out how he's expressing the English and how his mother language might kind of get in there to boost the emotion where there isn't like an English correlate for what he wants to say, or if there's like a term of endearment or something kind of that gets attached here and there. I wanted you to sort of feel like he has this history from where he came from and his character, even though we don't have time to explore it in the books.
And they're like every like all of the proxy people, they're all so diverse. They're from completely different cultures and races, and it's it would be hard if there weren't those like distinguishing pieces to kind of like tell them apart and be able to bond with the character emotionally if they didn't have these cute little quirks and the different things that make you root for them, that distinguish them from each other, and then also add to that world building of being like, wow, this really is like a huge multiverse that they come from all different types of places. And then also the other aspect of it with Abris, that is kind of plot but a plot part too, with her trying to make her technology work.
What I really like writing in my fiction is found families. So I like writing I like exploring that these misfits from all kinds of different identities and cultures and walks of life can come together into a unit that works. Sometimes maybe it's dysfunctional, but this like found family of drawing from all these different cultures and races and peoples and they bond because of this deep love and care and going through experiences together and finding similarities despite all these differences. So building her own little found family was really fun.
Yeah, for sure. And at the kind of the beginning, you kind of can't really tell if you want to root for them or if you're kind of, at least me, I was like kind of on the phone, like, I can't tell if I'm trusting.
Yeah, it's so funny. The main character in the first book it's a found family story as well. So he has this crew, he assembles around him. And I had a friend who was beta reading for me. She was like, this family's too functional. Like, this isn't realistic. Because they really do all love each other. And then in the second book, she was like, this one's like more normal. Like, they're not very much, they're all kind of at each other's throats a little bit sometimes. And they disagree a lot. and their sort of loyalties lie in different directions, and they can argue. I was like, wait a minute, this is normal?
You wrote two different families for two different types of people.
Yeah. So No Fed Glass, the first book, partly started because I thought I'm always trying to find new challenges for myself in creative, whatever creative medium I'm in, so I'm not always in my comfort zone. I thought, okay, an ensemble cast is really hard. Like, I've not done that before. So I'm going to write a book that's an ensemble cast. So there's 6 characters that are always together pretty much. I was like, okay, this is one of the, I had like 4 or 5 challenges that I set myself for this specific book. So it's like, okay, found family, we have an ensemble cast, I can do this. And I don't know why for the second book I thought, you know what, let's add a whole second ensemble cast on top of the first one. This will be a good idea. Because the more characters you have, it's really hard to juggle, and the page time just kind of expands, and it's hard to keep everyone distinct and purposeful, but that was another good challenge, I guess.
Yeah. No, I loved, and I love the you choosing the style of doing the perspective changes between chapters as well, because that just like added love more knowledge. Yeah. I love that.
I really love dual perspectives, because you can play with what the reader knows that the character doesn't. And build a lot of tension between like what's about to happen, what they want to happen, and play with expectations and emotional and physical tension. Yeah, that's probably my favorite format.
And then I think I like verbally expressed excitement when I saw it was either the second book or the third book when we start seeing Thor's perspective, and I was like, yes!
Yeah, again, I don't know why I thought that exponentially increasing the points of view was a good challenge. But it's 1 point of view in the first book, 2 in the second, and 4 in the final one. But getting in the 2 characters added in the third book, getting in their heads was, after spending the whole second book kind of with them really involved, and then like getting into their heads was really fun. I think Thrace surprised me the most of like, because I'm sort of, as a writer, I am like engineering and really outlining and like designing what I want to do, and then 50% is just like exploring, writing by the seat of my pants, like let's figure it out as I go along. So I didn't actually know like what his voice would be or what being in his head would be like until I was drafting. Like I knew what the scene was supposed to be doing and like what the actions were, action beats and all that, but I didn't know what his actual voice would come out like or what it would feel like to kind of inhabit that head.
Yeah, until you tapped into the hyperphantasia.
Yeah. And then I was in there like, wow, there's a lot going on in here.
Yeah, that was really great. And it like answers a question that, you know, the audience has, or at least I had. The whole first 2 books of like, what is going on in this dude's head? Like,
yes, especially the characters that are like secretive and hold a lot of cards to their chest. Like, unless you're seeing their perspective, you don't really get like the full scoop of what they're feeling or thinking and how they're, you know, what chess moves they're deciding on at that moment.
Yeah. I love being in his head and watching him intentionally acknowledge that he's doing certain actions to manipulate people.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, I'm going to reward this person with a compliment because it's better on my, you know, it's a better strategical move. And I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah. We see the constant calculation behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Yeah. It's good books. The one of the reasons that I was asking about like the sounds that you bring to life or you couldn't bring to life was because like just consistently I was just like, man, this would make such a good like audio drama, you know, like a good like you know, one of those like listen to is like actually narrated and acted type of a thing. And I was like, man, that would be so much fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. I would like to work on more audio dramas. That seems pretty fun. When I was an intern for Randy Tom, one of my jobs, it was like very slow period. There wasn't a whole lot to do. One of my jobs was he had a lot of 1/4-inch tape, like old radio plays, really old, that he wanted to transfer. So like roll the big machine in and like bake the tapes. And I had to listen down as it was recording off. And they were really cool, like all the sound effects, all the dramatic performances. I was like, I kind of miss these. We don't do that as much anymore.
Yeah, not as common, but when they do come, they're super duper fun to work on. They're probably the most like creative, the world is your oyster medium that I've kind of experienced so far, because it's like they hand you the script and it's like they're, at least my experiences have been really good. They're just like, go wild.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like my creative mode is really different when I'm working like without any kind of picture or like other visual context or anything like that, versus when I'm really trying to stick it to something on the screen. And so some of my best sound design has been for films where I'm starting so early there isn't even a film to watch yet. And we don't often get concept art or anything like that, so it's just kind of, here are the things we're gonna need, use your imagination.
Yeah.
And really engaging that imaginative muscle a lot while also being creative is, I think, the best. That's probably why I gravitated to writing a lot, is because it's literally just from my head to the page.
Yeah. Probably it's the most empty starting out that you could possibly get is a blank piece of paper. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And then now coming up, you have a novella coming out in July, or at least pre-releasing in July. I'm so excited.
It's out July 28th, Cast and Gain. It's a novella, so itty-bitty novel. In the same world as the Graven trilogy, but completely new cast, completely can be read standalone, set quite far in the past. But if you have read the trilogy, there's a lot of fun Easter eggs to be had. Yeah.
I have been thinking about it, and I have little headcanons of what it might be relating to and stuff, especially given the name, but I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see it.
Awesome.
Has this whole trilogy kind of, because you kind of mentioned you were like, you kind of wanted to challenge yourself and create like a multi-casted book, and that's kind of how it was born. But does it predate that? Like, have you always kind of had this story, this kind of floating around in your head until you finally decided to publish it? Because I know it starts like that with a lot of people. They have these, these worlds in their head that they finally get to put to paper. Or was it just like I'm gonna do this and just started?
So I've been writing since I was really little, like since I could hold a pen. That's kind of cliche to say, but I've always been like creative in whatever medium was available. So writing has always kind of stuck around as a staple. But I was always writing stories and making worlds for myself, like for the love of world building and exploring characters and settings different than our own. Exploring my own feelings and philosophies through those worlds. And I never really felt the need to get published or to write for an audience or anything like that until, I want to say, around like 2015. So quite late, after I'd already written quite a few stories in a big story world just for myself. None of that is published and probably will never see the light of day, I hope. My younger self.
Darn it.
Writing. Unless I completely overhaul it. But I think it was like the first big challenge in my writing life was like, okay, let's finish a complete novel for an audience that isn't me. Because creating in any medium for solely yourself is completely different than, creating for an audience to digest or for a market or as a product, that sort of thing. So writing a complete finished novel was a challenge that I wanted to take on. Nova Gloss was my second/third finished manuscript. So it wasn't the first book I wrote. I wrote an epic fantasy trilogy. I got through 2 books, and then I was writing Nova Gloss at the same time as the second one. And around that time, I got a literary agent and took it out on submission. And one of the things on submission to editors at publishing houses is the rule of thumb then, and still now I think, is sort of you write a, quote, standalone with series potential. So you write one book that could be just the one book if they only want to buy one, but if they want to buy a series, it has potential to expand and be duology, trilogy, long series. So you kind of you write that one book, not knowing if it's going to get bought or not. Probably likely not. And then you move on and start writing something else. So I was writing something else. And when Nova Gloss did get bought by Orbit Books, I thought, well, oh shit, what do you do when it actually gets... like, I haven't planned the rest of the series. They bought the 3 books. And I had a loose idea of where I wanted to go with it. But then it was very much like I was on the production schedule. I had deadlines. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of time to sort of figure out this 3-book story that I wanted to write. So a lot of it felt like, if you've seen Wallace and Gromit, that gif of Gromit on the train laying the tracks as the train is going in like full speed. I related to that really hard. That's what the whole trilogy felt like. It's just kind of laying the tracks as it's going. And I think it would have been a really different story if I had the time luxury to have planned it all out ahead of time. I don't think I would have written this story in the way that I wrote it. So I'm not upset about being under so much duress and pressure to like kind of travel along with it the way that it turned out. But yeah, definitely I didn't really have my bearings when the first book sold.
Well, that's interesting because, I mean, just as a reader, it definitely feels like it was planned that way from the beginning, because so many things from, the first ones are resolved in the end. Like, just the whole arc Caden goes on himself is just like so perfectly laid out by the end. So it's like you
problem
couldn't tell.
Good problem solving. Yeah. At the end of each book, it sort of felt like I had left myself like 8 random Lego pieces, and the next book was like, okay, what could I make with these very specific but not very planned out pieces? And then at the next book, it's the same thing. I'm like, okay, well, now I have these 5. What can I make? But I think it felt a little kind of organic in its own way, that process of like, this is the situation at the moment. Like, these are the threads that I have now. These are the promises I made before. These are like where the characters are at. And then drawing logical conclusions of like where those could go or where those should go, what's actually possible, where it's possible for the story to go or not, and weeding those logical options from where you're at to something that's satisfying and interesting.
Other than Cast and Gain, do you have like other future like just concept of things that you would love to work on? Any like challenges you would love to give yourself with writing? And I guess that can spread to sound and stuff too. Any challenges that you are kind of like New Year's resolutions that you're kind of like, this is where I'm going next?
Yeah, I'm working on a standalone science fantasy novel right now. That's
nice.
One of those, and I've had works in progress like this before where it feels like just out of my skill range. Like I'm not quite leveled enough for this book, but that's good. That'll push me to grow as I'm writing it.
Yeah, totally.
One of my editors on Cast and Gain described it as, so it's coming out by Grimdark Magazine. And when I was pitching it to them, I was like, are you sure I'm a good fit? Because, like, I do write really dark content, but it's also, like, there's a lot of heart in there, too. And I'm like, it'll be fine, Anyway, one of my editors described it as grimdark cozy, which are like two completely opposite, like
No, I
genre
can
vibes. And I was like, you know what? That's absolutely accurate.
that sums it up really well. Grim, dark, cozy. I love that. I'll use that when recommending a series.
Perfect.
So you're working on another novel now that's separate from the whole world that we've seen so far?
Yeah, separate world, standalone, so it won't be a series. And this one won't be spacefaring. It won't be set in space. It's on a very messed up planet that sort of digests and ferments and resurrects bodies after a certain amount of time. And if they get exhumed prematurely, they end up as these very cool, immortal, shape-shifting creatures.
Dang. I'm excited.
Yeah. So there's that going on, and the main character I've been wanting to write a memory palace book for a long time where the character kind of lives in these two worlds. One is like a psychic, like literal memory palace that they can navigate, sort of like a lucid dream that has all this symbolic, like Inception style world. So my comps are like Inception, the Southern Reach trilogy, and like Scavenger's Reign, all wrapped into this new novel.
Nice. Well, this is our question that we ask every guest that comes through Field and Foley. What is the first sound you ever recorded, and why did you record it?
So I remember I was in Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School at the time, and we had just had our class where they go over the recorders and field recording, and we got to check out recorders. So I think I had like an old Fostex, like it was ancient at this point. And I was so excited. So I brought it back to my apartment, and then I walked in and went into the hallway, and my roommate's little dog was chewing on a bone on the floor, like really loud, just like that crunch, crunch. And I was like, oh yeah, this is the moment. So I recorded that as my first ever sound, just because it was there and I was excited and it was like interesting and caught my attention. But sadly, I don't think I've used it in anything yet. That's a tragedy. I need to figure out where to put that little dog chewing sound.
Nice. That is a really good answer. I like that. You already had an ear for super interesting, catching random moments of life.
Yeah.
In school. Well, do you have anyone or a project that you'd like to shout out or recommend or, lead people to? Your novella is definitely one. Check out Cast and Gain on July 28th. If it's past that, go read it.
Yeah.
But anything else?
I think we've covered everything. I write as Nia Hansen, even though I sound design as Nia Hansen. So you can find all my books that way. And also check out Project Hail Mary next year.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. Well, thank you so much, Nia, for being on the show. It was amazing getting to chat with you, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
This was so much fun. Thank you, Faith.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
You've come to die. Your world is now my world. Hate all worlds.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
I see through you.
What did you just do to me?
I pushed your astral form out of your physical form.
What's in that tea?
Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.